Hello, my name is Dawn Dubriel, and I am very happy to be here with all of you in our course, EME 6601 Instructional Design during Spring 2021. The topic of my presentation is Rapid Instructional Design. As we know, instructional design involves designing materials in a way that improves learning. In 2000, Dave Meyer developed the Rapid Instructional Design model in his book, The Accelerated Learning Handbook. He felt that a fresh approach to instructional design was needed because traditional instructional design models like ADDIE were too time-consuming, controlling, and materials-based rather than activities-based. As we read in the early chapters of our course's textbook, business owners often need instructional materials developed fast. They want it yesterday, even when the instructional designer is not the SME, the subject matter expert. Designing effective learning materials requires time and considerable resources. Rapid instructional design bases its design process on creating learner-centered activities, which simultaneously speeds up the process for both designers and learners. It emphasizes providing learners with real-world experience, practice, and feedback. Save time and use rapid design. Create activity-centered training. The focus of rapid instructional design is to create activity-centered training rather than the traditional model of passive learning through presentations, lectures, and the like. Like Einstein says, knowledge is experience. Rapid instructional design's guiding principle is never do for learners what learners can do for themselves and for each other. You might be wondering, can rapid instructional design be used in all types of educational settings, like corporate and academia? I think yes, and we'll provide 2 examples later in this presentation. This leads us to the 4 pillars on which the model is founded: preparation, presentation, practice, and performance. Please note that all 4 phases must be present and in proper balance for true learning to occur. Leonardo da Vinci once said, "Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." And the value of this model and its recommendations can be found in the following simplistic approaches that emphasize designing for active learning. The preparation phase prepares learners for the learning. It emphasizes arousing their interest, raising their curiosity, providing the content in the context of real-life scenarios, and discussing the learning objectives and how they will benefit the learners. The presentation phase introduces the new knowledge and skills. Here is where you would show real-world examples, give interactive presentations, and use problem-solving exercises like relevant case studies that involve real people and companies. The practice phase integrates the new knowledge or skills by presenting hands-on activities, providing feedback, and opportunities for reflection. This is critical because it allows for learning via trial and error. Providing discussions and constructive feedback will help learners develop mastery. The performance phase is where the rubber meets the road. It's where learners apply the new knowledge or skills in a real-world setting. It is also known as authentic assessment. It enhances and reinforces their learning. Be sure to reward their success. Also, when creating your learning activities, make your design savvy. Somatic involves physical activity because too much sitting is draining for the body and the mind. Moving the body enhances circulation to the brain and enhances learning. Auditory involves learners speaking aloud about what they're learning. You might have heard, the person doing the most talking is doing the most learning. Visual involves seeing, creating, and integrating images of all varieties. Meyer elucidates that visual communication is even more important than verbal communication for the simple reason being that humans have more equipment in their heads for processing visual information than any other sense. And intellectual, which involves using the mind to reflect on experiences and create meanings. Meyer articulates that the mind is autodidactic, meaning it teaches itself through reflection and problem solving and by creating mental models which are new neural networks out of what it has experienced. On a side note, doesn't this remind you of the constructivist learning theory? Make your designs activity-based. As we have learned thus far, the guiding principle of rapid instructional design is that people learn far more from active experiences than they do from presentations and materials, no matter how technologically sophisticated. As Mayer says, you can rid yourself of more useless baggage than you realize and end up with happier learners and a much more satisfying long-range result. Create a learning community. There is extensive research indicating that peer teaching is superior to any other form of instruction. Have you realized that you learn faster when coworkers show you how to do something? Have you realized that you actually learn something better when you know you have to teach it? Have you ever led or participated in a workshop where everyone is learning something new and they help each other figure out the steps and are also inspired by each other to do more and be better? How about our online discussion boards when we are presenting, reading each other's posts, and commenting? I have certainly learned from reading some of your posts and watching your presentations. As much as you can, design for learning communities that allow everyone to be both a teacher and a learner. Alternate between physically active and passive learning activities. Physical learning activities that you can have your learners do involve standing and talking, conducting a short presentation for the class, manipulating physical objects, acting out processes, role-playing, creating concept maps, or engaging in a hands-on activity. Physically passive learning activities are observing, thinking, reflecting, building mental models, listening to presentations, or interacting with computers. Follow the 30-70 rule. This is not an absolute percentage, but a best practice is to devote 30% or less of learning time to instructor or media presentations and 70% or more to learner practice and integration activities. After you've presented some material and engaged in some discussion, put the ball in their court. As Mayer says, learning is not a spectator sport. They must participate. A good design gets the ball in the learner's court as often and for as long as possible. This is because it is what the learner says and does that is more important for the actual learning than what the instructional media says and does. Create a flexible, open-ended design. Rapid instructional design and accelerated learning design will make your instructional designer life easier in our fast-paced, ever-changing world. Create flexible learning materials because processes are always being updated to continually evolve and improve. The rapid instructional design model eases your development time, subsequently reducing your learner's training time, and facilitates a focused level of learner involvement for deeper and better learning. What does this look like when developing training materials for corporations? When I worked for Office Depot Corporate as an instructional media designer, I created many 3-minute quick hit videos that in-store associates watched on the floor in a team huddle, then went out and helped customers using their newfound knowledge. Other instructional designers on my team created job aids that were placed near registers or hung on the walls of the break room. Managers would conduct skill builders, which is another term for role-playing, when training their sales associates. What does this look like when developing training materials for education? As an instructional designer in academia, sometimes I lead workshops. Say I was leading a workshop to show faculty how to narrate their keynote, which is Apple's version of PowerPoint, and save it as a video file. I would first play my keynote video, explain how they could disseminate their narrated videos in their online courses, show them the steps, and have them all practice on their iPads until they completed their narration and saved it as a video file. The workshop was also an open forum for discussion with hands-on activities in a helpful learning community. I would be remiss if I did not include criticisms for Dave Mayer's rapid instructional design model. Mayer writes that it is a replacement for previous ISD models because it may greatly enhance many learning programs. Well, others simply recommend that it only be plugged into traditional models and does not suffice as a replacement due to its lacking of the necessary analyzing, developing, and evaluating of the learning processes it creates. Discussion questions. How would you go about implementing Dave Mayer's rapid instructional design philosophy into your instruction? What could be the most flexible method you would create instructional materials that you know must be constantly updated? How would you go about facilitating a peer-to-peer learning environment? Thanks for watching. I'm looking forward to your comments and hope you enjoyed my presentation on rapid instructional design.